The clock on Marcus's bedside table blinked 9:14 p.m. He had been sifting through invoices for his small contracting business, his focus fractured by the feeling that something had been off with Alicia lately. She'd been more guarded, her laughter more performative, her words often clipped or overly sweet. Yet, he had always dismissed the thought. She's just stressed, he told himself. When the phone rang, Marcus almost ignored it, but the caller ID displayed Beth's name, Alicia's best friend. Beth rarely called him directly, let alone late at night. He answered, already bracing for the news his gut knew was coming. "Marcus?" Beth's voice cracked with a nervous edge. "I need to talk to you. It's about Alicia." Marcus's throat tightened. "What about her?" There was a pause, the kind that carried weight. He could hear Beth sniffle on the other end of the line, a sound so soft but laden with guilt. "I can't keep this from you anymore," she began, her words spilling over one another. "I've been covering for her, but you deserve to know the truth." His heart pounded as he gripped the phone. "Covering for what, Beth? Just say it." And so she did, with a trembling voice. The names of places, dates, and details spilled out like shards of glass. Beth confessed to helping Alicia mask late-night rendezvous as work events, fabricating alibis for unexplainable weekends. She admitted to seeing Alicia with a man, Daniel, several times. The image of Alicia, his wife of 12 years, with another man slashed across Marcus's mind. "I don't know how to make this right," Beth sobbed. "But I couldn't stay silent anymore." Marcus sat back, his jaw tightening. The betrayal sank in slowly, like a boat taking on water. He felt everything and nothing, all at once. Rage, despair, confusion. But his voice came out even. "Why now, Beth? Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of lying for her," she said. "And because you're a good man, Marcus. You don't deserve this." For a moment the line was silent, save for the shallow breaths on both ends. Marcus's mind raced through every moment Alicia had seemed distant, every story that hadn't quite added up. It all fit now. Painfully so. "Thank you for telling me," he said finally, his tone measured but distant. Beth hesitated. "Marcus, what are you going to do?" He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because his response was already forming, and it wasn't one she needed to hear yet. Instead, he ended the call with quiet finality. Afterward, Marcus sat in the darkened room, the phone still in his hand. He knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't confront Alicia until he had the truth, every sordid detail mapped out like one of the blueprints he worked with daily. He wasn't a man who acted on impulse. This betrayal would demand precision and justice. And so the plan began. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the glow of his laptop illuminating the weary lines of his face. Alicia was asleep upstairs, or so he assumed. Her claims of late-night exhaustion had long since become routine, but now they were tinted with suspicion. Beth's revelations had stripped away the illusion of trust, leaving only questions in their place. And Marcus intended to answer every single one. He began by reviewing their shared calendar. Alicia's work trips were noted with pristine precision, yet something about the dates struck him as odd. She had returned from several of these trips without the usual exhaustion or stories of meetings that had run too long. She often seemed energized, not weary, a detail he hadn't questioned before. Now he saw it for what it was, a carefully curated facade. Next, he combed through their cell phone statements, cross-referencing numbers he didn't recognize with the times Beth had mentioned. His heart sank when one number popped up repeatedly, its presence glaring in its consistency. Late-night calls. Texts at odd hours. A pattern he hadn't noticed before now. His focus shifted to their credit card statements. Charges Alicia had described as client dinners suddenly aligned with the dates Beth had provided. Marcus found transactions for upscale restaurants in nearby towns he'd never visited with her. A hotel bill caught his eye, an expense she had brushed off as an overbooked conference, requiring her to stay overnight. The cold hard data confirmed what Beth had told him. Each piece of evidence felt like a hammer strike, splintering the fragile hope that this was all a misunderstanding. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with indirect evidence. He wanted something irrefutable, a thread that Alicia couldn't wriggle free from with excuses. He contacted a private investigator, an old friend from his high school days who now specialized in discreet surveillance. Within hours, they had a plan: track Alicia's movements and confirm where she went when she claimed to be working late or traveling. While waiting for updates, Marcus revisited his own memories, scrutinizing every detail he had overlooked. He thought of the mornings when Alicia would return from work trips glowing, or the moments she would pull away from his touch, citing exhaustion. He thought of the nights she had rushed to the shower the moment she came home, brushing aside his questions with a dismissive smile. Each moment sharpened his resolve. Within days, the investigator provided a full dossier. Photos, locations, Alicia meeting Daniel at a cafe, their heads close as they spoke. Alicia slipping into a car that wasn't hers, her smile wide and radiant in a way Marcus hadn't seen in years. The images weren't grainy or vague. They were crystal clear, as undeniable as the ache building in Marcus's chest. He laid out the evidence methodically, cataloging it like a prosecutor preparing a case. Alicia would try to lie, he knew that much, but Marcus intended to be ready. There would be no room for doubt, no path for her to escape the truth. With the evidence in hand, Marcus felt his emotions shift. The pain remained, but it was accompanied by a quiet clarity. He wasn't going to confront Alicia in anger. He would confront her with the cold weight of the truth. She had made her choices, and now it was his turn to make his. The following evening, Marcus waited in the living room, the stack of evidence arranged on the coffee table like a damning exhibit. He had spent the day rehearsing this moment, ensuring his emotions wouldn't derail the conversation. This wasn't about shouting or accusations. It was about uncovering the truth and forcing Alicia to confront what she had done. Alicia walked in, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, a cheery smile on her face. "Hey, babe," she said, slipping out of her coat and hanging it on the rack. She froze when she saw Marcus sitting there, his posture unusually rigid, his face unreadable. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" "Sit down," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." Alicia hesitated, her eyes flicking to the coffee table. The neatly organized documents caught her attention, and for a brief moment panic flickered in her expression. She recovered quickly, plastering a confused smile as she sat across from him. "You're scaring me. What's this about?" Marcus slid a photo across the table, the first from the investigator's dossier, a candid shot of Alicia and Daniel at the cafe. "I think you know." Her face paled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Finally she managed, "Marcus, this isn't what it looks like." "Then explain," Marcus replied, his tone still controlled. He leaned forward, fixing her with a gaze that made it clear he wouldn't accept half-truths. "Explain the calls, the texts, the trips. Explain Dan." Alicia's eyes darted around the room as though searching for an escape. When none presented itself, her demeanor shifted. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "So you've been spying on me. That's a real violation of trust." "Trust?" Marcus's voice sharpened, the first crack in his composure. "You're talking about trust? Do you think I don't see the irony here?" Alicia tried another approach. "It was just a mistake, a meaningless fling. It didn't mean anything, Marcus. I love you." "Meaningless?" Marcus echoed, his voice low. He picked up another photo and laid it in front of her. This one of her kissing Daniel in a hotel lobby. "This looks pretty meaningful to me." Her defenses began to crumble. I didn't mean for it to happen," she stammered. "It's been hard lately, and I was lonely. You've been so busy with work." "No," Marcus interrupted, his tone sharp. "You don't get to make this about me. I wasn't the one sneaking around, lying to your face, or pretending to go on business trips. This is about your choices, Alicia. Take responsibility." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment Marcus thought she might finally show genuine remorse, but then her expression hardened. "Did Beth tell you? That backstabbing—" "This isn't about Beth," Marcus snapped, his calm finally breaking. "This is about us. And now it's about me deciding what's next." Alicia slumped in her chair, her defiance gone. Marcus stared at her, his heart aching, but his resolve stronger than ever. The next move was his to make. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, glinting off the evidence Marcus had painstakingly prepared. Photos, call logs, receipts, all laid out in silent condemnation. He had replayed this moment in his mind 100 times, each scenario ranging from an explosion of rage to a quiet, controlled discussion. In the end, Marcus knew he wouldn't shout or scream. The truth was its own weapon, and he intended to wield it with precision. Alicia entered the room, her hair damp from the shower, wearing the easy smile she always reserved for mornings when she wasn't rushing out the door. Marcus sat calmly at the table, the evidence obscured under a file folder, His demeanor, however, gave her pause. "Hey, you're up early," she remarked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Marcus studied her, searching for signs of guilt, for cracks in her polished exterior. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady. Alicia froze for the briefest moment before recovering. "Okay," she replied, taking a seat across from him. Her smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease. "What's this about?" He opened the folder, spreading its contents across the table like a prosecutor presenting his case. Alicia's eyes darted from the photos to the call logs and receipts, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition, and finally to dread. "I know," Marcus said simply. Alicia's face paled. "Know what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "About you, about Daniel, about everything," Marcus replied, his gaze unflinching. "Beth told me, but I wanted to be sure. So I checked, and then I had someone confirm." For a moment, Alicia said nothing. Her hands trembled as she reached for one of the photos, as if touching it would make it less real. "This isn't what it looks like," she began, her voice shaky. "Don't," Marcus interrupted, his tone sharper now. "Don't insult me by pretending this is something it's not. I have the dates, the places, the calls, I have everything." Alicia's composure cracked, and she leaned back in her chair, her shoulders slumping under the weight of the truth. "So Beth told you?" she murmured, more to herself than to him. Her eyes flashed with anger. "She had no right!" "She had every right," Marcus countered, his calm beginning to fray. "She told me because she couldn't stomach lying for you anymore. She told me because I deserved the truth, something you couldn't give me." Alicia's anger quickly turned defensive. "It's not like I planned for this to happen," she said. "Daniel was just different. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years." "And that justifies lying? Cheating?" Marcus asked, his voice rising for the first time. "You could have talked to me, Alicia. You could have told me how you felt. Instead, you chose this." The room fell silent. Alicia's eyes brimmed with tears, but Marcus felt no pity. He had offered her trust, loyalty, and love, and she had shattered it. Word of Alicia's affair spread faster than Marcus anticipated. Whether it was Beth's guilty conscience or Alicia's unraveling defenses, Marcus wasn't sure. But soon, whispers turned into conversations, and their once intact social circle fractured. Alicia found herself increasingly isolated. Friends who had admired her poise and charm began to see her in a different light. Invitations to dinner parties dwindled. People who had once been her confidants offered only polite smiles and distant conversations. Marcus didn't revel in her isolation, but he couldn't deny the grim satisfaction of seeing her face the consequences. Her relationship with Beth, however, was the most immediate casualty. When Alicia could have confronted her best friend, the fallout was explosive. Marcus overheard their shouting match one evening, Beth's voice trembling with regret and defiance. "Yola, you betrayed me!" Alicia yelled. "I couldn't keep lying, Alicia," Beth shot back. "I couldn't keep covering for you while you destroyed the man who never deserved this." "Do you think you're some kind of hero?" Alicia spat. "You've ruined everything." "No, Alicia," Beth replied coldly. "You ruined it. I just made sure Marcus knew the truth." Their friendship dissolved in that moment, the bond that had once seemed unbreakable now irreparably torn. Daniel, the man at the center of the chaos, fared no better. Marcus, armed with evidence of the affair, made discreet but devastating moves. He leaked enough information to Daniel's colleagues to spark a quiet investigation into his conduct. Daniel's reckless confidence crumbled when whispers of impropriety reached his superiors, threatening his career. Meanwhile, Marcus began filing for divorce, meticulously building his case. He made no effort to hide the evidence of Alicia's infidelity from their family and mutual friends. He wanted the truth to stand unchallenged, to ensure Alicia couldn't twist the narrative to her advantage. For Alicia, the weight of her choices became inescapable. Marcus's measured but firm actions left her scrambling to maintain control over her unraveling life. Friends who once admired her loyalty turned their backs. Her lover distanced himself, unwilling to face the fallout. Her carefully curated image lay in ruins. Marcus, meanwhile, felt the first flickers of freedom. The betrayal still burned, but the knowledge that he had faced the truth head-on, armed himself with evidence, and reclaimed his dignity gave him strength. He wasn't merely surviving the betrayal, he was reclaiming his life, step by step. For Alicia, the reality of her actions settled in slowly, leaving her to grapple with the wreckage of her choices. Marcus had moved forward, while she was left to contend with the life she had dismantled. The gavel struck down with a decisive thud, the sound echoing in the quiet courtroom. Marcus sat motionless, his expression calm yet unreadable. The divorce had been finalized. Alicia, seated across from him, looked smaller than he remembered, her confident exterior chipped away by months of mounting consequences. It had taken months to get here, but for Marcus, the moment was less about triumph and more about closure. He had spent years building a life with Alicia, only to see it dismantled by her betrayal. Now, with the judge ruling, that chapter was officially over. After leaving the courthouse, Marcus walked out into the crisp autumn air, taking his first deep breath in what felt like an eternity. His thoughts were not on Alicia, but on what lay ahead. The past year had been a crucible, one that tested his resilience and resolve. But it had also illuminated truths about himself he hadn't fully realized: his strength, his capacity for forgiveness, and his determination to rebuild. At first, he had struggled to reconcile the life he thought he had with the reality Alicia had created behind his back. It wasn't just the betrayal of her affair, but the deception, the effort she had put into maintaining a lie. But through therapy and introspection, Marcus learned that Alicia's choices weren't his failures, they were hers alone. He was finally free from the burden of trying to make sense of her actions. The financial settlement had been fair but firm. Alicia received a modest sum and nothing more. Marcus's lawyer ensured that her affair with Daniel weighed heavily in the proceedings. He kept the house, a choice that surprised even him at first. It wasn't the memories he wanted to cling to, but the sense of reclaiming something that was his. Slowly, he began renovating. Every coat of paint, every piece of furniture he replaced was a step toward making the space his own again. Beth, Alicia's former best friend, reached out once more after the divorce was finalized. Despite her role in revealing the truth, Marcus had kept his distance. Her guilt and need for absolution had been overwhelming at first, and he wasn't ready to forgive her for covering for Alicia for so long. But now, as they sat over coffee, Marcus saw the toll it had taken on her, too. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Beth said, her voice heavy with regret. "I should have told you sooner." "I won't lie," Marcus replied. "I was angry at you for keeping her secrets, but you did the right thing in the end. That's what matters." Beth nodded, tears welling in her eyes. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was enough for both of them to begin moving forward. Daniel, meanwhile, had disappeared from their lives entirely. His once promising career had taken a significant hit after Marcus's subtle maneuvering exposed his questionable ethics. Rumors about his personal life circulated within his professional circle, and his standing never recovered. Marcus took no joy in Daniel's downfall, but felt a grim satisfaction that the man wouldn't be able to harm others as he had harmed him. Alicia, for her part, had tried to reconnect with Marcus after the dust settled. Her attempts ranged from apologetic messages to late-night voicemails tinged with regret. But Marcus never responded. He had nothing left to say to her. Their marriage was over, and he refused to allow her to drag him back into the past. Months after the divorce, Marcus found himself sitting at the edge of a lake, the water rippling gently in the evening breeze. A local hiking trail had become his escape, a place where he could think, reflect, and heal. He'd started journaling, capturing not only his pain but also his hopes for the future. He had also reconnected with old friends, something he had neglected during his marriage. They reminded him of the person he was before Alicia, the man who loved life, who was unshakably loyal, and who found joy in simple things. Slowly but surely, Marcus began to feel like himself again. On a crisp winter morning, Marcus met someone new. Her name was Claire, and they struck up a conversation while volunteering at a local charity event. She was warm, kind, and carried a quiet strength that drew him in. Their connection was slow and unforced, free from the shadows of his past. For the first time in years, Marcus felt the stirrings of hope, not just for love, but for the possibility of a future untainted by betrayal. As the snow began to fall that evening, Marcus looked back on the road he had traveled. The pain of Alicia's infidelity had been profound, but it hadn't broken him. Instead, it had forged him into someone stronger, more self-aware, and ready to embrace life once more. The story of Marcus and Alicia had ended, but his own story was just beginning, and this time, he would be the one writing the chapters.